Reminder, this meeting is being recorded. If anyone online would like to sign up for public comment, you can do so via the chat within the first 30 minutes of the meeting. Anyone here in person in Robb Hall, there is sign-ups at either of the entrances. If you could please sign up, we will take you in the order you were received.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, I bring this meeting of the Boston Public Library Board of Trustees to order. To start with, we'll start with our traditional and valuable opening statement for the Boston Public Library. The trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equity and to the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library's Central Library stands on land that was once a water-based ecosystem providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We're committed to land acknowledgements for all locations at which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context for our planning, deliberations, and public engagement so that they can take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. Thank you very much. With that, begin the chair's remarks report and our agenda today. We're very excited to have everyone here today. Some welcoming remarks. We'll do a roll call, we'll do minutes, and then we'll move on to president's remarks. But before we begin, I want to wish a huge congratulations to our president of the Boston Public Library, David, who got married yesterday to his longtime partner at the Boston Public Library.
During one of our one-hour ceremonies, we were able to secure a spot after 27 years of waiting. So thank you very much.
And I just want to say that I'm thrilled that David has decided to spend his honeymoon with us. I'm very honored.
Absolutely. So thank you and congratulations. And Kong is a terrific guy. So want to also just make a note. Today's Tuesday. On Friday, we had a wonderful professional development day for all of the Boston Public Library employees. Some may note that I'm still wearing my pin of a trusted resource, each of the individuals that came. And so this was a chance for 500 plus employees, I guess, to really gather around on an annual basis. And I think it's been maybe even 2 years or so since the last one.
22, yeah.
22. Right, and really have a day celebrating the staff work, but also the amazing opportunity to improve and to develop one's professional journey. So Chief Masso was able to kick things off, which was terrific. I was able to give some closing remarks. We all got pies for Pie Day, actually, which was terrific. And thank you very much to BPL Fund. I don't know whether I see Paula here, but certainly it was an incredible day, and I know all of the staff really enjoyed it. With that, just a roll call, Pamela, if you don't mind.
Of course. I just want to note that we do have one trustee joining us via Zoom. It's our Vice Chair, Evelyn Arano-Ortiz. So I'll just say your last names. Arano-Ortiz?
Here.
Bao will be late, I believe. Berman?
Here.
Canales?
Here.
Cheryl Cronin will be absent today. Heiler? Here. Jeff Hawkins will be absent today. Kim?
Here.
Levine?
Here.
Lou?
Here.
Masso is running late. He is stuck in the terrible traffic. I just want everyone to know. He let me know. Where am I? Oliwala?
Here.
Rush will be absent. He will be joining us later today. Westra?
Here.
And Wooten.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Pamela. And order of business, looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting of February 4th, 2025, where much of the focus was on our financials, as well as an update from the BPL Fund. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor, aye? Aye. Great. Any abstentions? No, and so moved. Great. Thank you. Oh, thank you. One abs. No, we're all good. Thank you. With that, moving on to the President's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and trustees. We have two matters to update you on that are listed on the agenda, which are opportunity for perhaps more substantive discussion than we sometimes have, both very significant. We're not asking you to vote on either of these today, but we appreciate your feedback, input. On the first matter, which is an update to the appropriate use policy, we will be asking you to vote at a later meeting on approving that policy. I'm joined at the presenters table by Audrey Wynn, who is the library's policy advisor and legal liaison, who has been working on this matter. So I'm going to hand the podium slides to Audrey. Audrey, welcome.
Thank you.
And I know you have a brief presentation to give us on the policy, and then we'll be opening for discussion.
Sure.
Before you start, I just want to note for the record that we were joined by Navjit Bal and Jose Masso. Sorry, go right ahead.
Okay. So as David said, my name is Audrey. I'm the policy advisor here at the library. When I began last July, it was the first time this role existed as a full-time position. So part of my job is to help update and standardize our policies, external and internal. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing. You could go to the next slide. Thank you. So updating library policy gives us an opportunity to do a lot of necessary and exciting things. We want to create institutional understandings of our policies that are reflective of our mission and values. We must include staff in decision-making and foster a sense of ownership. We can provide updated training, which is really exciting, and we can also thread some of our strategic plan themes into our public-facing policies and incorporate it into some of our everyday vocabulary as BPL staff. So the larger part of updating this has some new processes that are really important to do this. So our policy process will be a template for how we do this, making sure that it's inclusive, reflective of our values, and also allows for multiple opportunities for collaboration and feedback. A policy schedule where we just simply track the last time we looked at a policy and what's a good timeline to revisit it. And it also allows us to update our onboarding by infusing policy training across the library. And as we start to examine these policies, these are our sort of highest level questions that we start with. Does this policy reflect our mission and values? Is it functional? Is it easy for staff to use? If there are parts of the policy that are less comfortable for staff, how do we resolve those challenges? And finally, what are the supporting documents that need to be updated alongside? And today we're going to talk specifically about the AUP. That's where we started the process. It's our appropriate use policy, but I love an acronym, so I'm going to call it the AUP. So in addition to updating the actual text of our policy, we're creating a training for this policy. We're also going to update our incident report, training, and protocol. And we're going to finalize and publish trespass guidelines so all of our staff have access to them. So these three all speak to one another. They're part of a package deal in my mind. What are our expectations for behavior in our spaces? How do you resolve and report those when behavior goes outside of those expectations? And then if there is a decision to trespass, how is that decision made? And ideally, everybody would have the same amount of knowledge and expectation. So as we've been working on this, we started back in September of 2024, so it's been a long process. We've been gathering a lot of feedback. The most frequently stated thing as we've updated our policy text is that it's a lot more functional. It's easier to read, it's easier to discuss with patrons, and the categories of behavior are a little bit more intuitive than what the current policy has. I also asked staff who are participating to fill out a form. I think these comments are really reflective. This is a really nuanced policy. We're talking about human behavior. It is impossible to fully capture that, but we wanted it to be functional and, again, reflective of our values. And then particularly the last bullet point on the data highlight. The text of the policy is incredibly important, and we do want it to be excellent, but people and staff enforce the policy, so we also want to make sure that our staff have all of the tools beyond just training in the text of the policy to properly execute and enforce this. And this was a question I included. I wanted, we were kind of having this discussion, and I wanted a visual that reflected the text of the policy is important, but when you train people in policy, you also need support for management, a thorough training, and consistent policy enforcement as well. And so I collected all of this feedback. Every time we had a draft, I would get feedback that actually had nothing to do with the semantics of the policy, and had to do with how we roll this out and what it means to live and breathe this policy. So I collected this feedback to sort of illustrate this is one piece of the puzzle, and we're going to cover all of them. And then finally, this is our project timeline. So last month, we finalized the text of the policy. I'm presenting to you today. I'd like to be back in May to get a formal vote. And then we would roll out all of this training June through the end of 2025 for existing staff and make it a standard part of onboarding for new employees. And then this is just a non-exhaustive list of our wonderful staff members who have been involved. I think this long list is representative of what we all know. Our staff are excellent. They care about the work that they do and the place that they work. And this is really reflective of a collaborative effort. So that's the end of my information, if anybody has any questions.
So, if I may, so you talked about this authorized use policy as one example. What are some of the other are there other policies that you're looking at, and are you going to go through a similar process?
Absolutely. So essentially, this process will apply to all of our public-facing policies on our website. I don't know off the top of my head, but I want to say there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12. Our next policy that we're going to focus on is our privacy policy, and then immediately to follow is our photography and filming policy. So this is sort of square one of a likely multi-year process, and then because we have that policy schedule, we'll just keep on rolling.
And I'm curious about this data highlight in this, I think it's like the third to last slide. Where you said 0 respondents chose the text of the policy as the most important factor. I would think that, and maybe this is just my being a lawyer, the text would be really important, and if it's simple and understandable and clear, that would seem to me to be an important factor, but you're saying nobody chose that as an important factor?
So the question was formulated as staff safety is a common concern, and staff don't always feel they have discretion or ownership over the policy. So when we're thinking about how staff actually enforce the policy, what's the most important, and if not to downplay the importance of the text, but having a training that sets out very clear expectations, having support from your supervisor and management, knowing that the way you reacted or handled the situation is within expectations, they're going to react the same way, and again, consistent policy enforcement. All of these just exist beyond the four corners of the policy. So it's not to say that it's not important, but in action, all of those things are essential, I guess.
So the policy is a policy, but needs to be done appropriately by the people. It's still customer service, it's still interaction with the public. You need a nuance to it. So even though the text may not be exactly what, perfect, we have individuals that get trained appropriately. They have some right and independence to see the situation and make the right decision.
Absolutely, and I used to be a high school teacher. It is impossible to capture the breadth and depth and nuance of human behavior on a piece of paper, and to avoid having an exhaustive list, we wanted to simplify the policy but amp up all of the other supports.
And I think we had a version of this in our board package.
Yes.
The full policy,
Yeah,
yes, the current.
So that policy is what you've obviously been working on.
Yes.
And that's the feedback that you've received. And obviously that's, when you're dealing with the public in a situation like a public library, it's extraordinarily complicated. So
Yes.
I get the nuance here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, the work on the text of the policy is complete and was strong and now is stronger and updated for today's reality. But listening to the process that Audrey has run, the most important component to all our staff is that there's consistency in how it is to be applied and administered. And so this is why I think having clear expectations for members of the public, having clear training and orientation to the policy and how to deal with breaches of the policy for staff, and that the management team who have to deal with the exceptions then are responding in a consistent and appropriate way. But yes, at the core of this, the appropriate use policy governs the behavior of patrons in our spaces, in interacting with our spaces, with our collections, with our staff. So it's pretty fundamental. And so I think you've to be commended actually on running such a transparent and inclusive process, because at the end of the day, the buy-in and consistency is as important as the actual text. And you're correct, the nuances of actual human behavior, you cannot have a policy that tells you exactly what to do in every single situation. But you want to have the guidelines, principles, and escalation paths that govern what to do when something deviates from the norm. And I think we have that here. And, you know, over the last several years, as we've reported on at several meetings, we see more and more patrons who have distress in their own life presenting in a way that might not always be consistent with the appropriate use policy. And so we actually have to roll this out and deal with that on a more and more regular basis. And anything that makes it simpler, clearer, and consistent to administer is a positive thing.
So David, I would agree. I think the process you went through is really robust. But one of the things that helps to make this, whether it's AUP or your future policies, but especially to your point when it's dealing with human nature, is having a clear escalation process for staff. Is that also clear for everyone in terms of how they escalate if they find themselves in a situation where they're doing their best to follow, but they need support?
Yes, so that's part of also the thinking of having the AUP, the incident report, and trespass guidelines as one, because they speak to and inform each other and are entirely interrelated. So the training will have essentially a framework of how to almost triage what you're looking at. Our focus is on observable behavior and how to approach that, how to assess it. Some things are annoying, some things are really toeing the line, and some things are safety concerns. So we want staff to know a framework for how to approach those. We want to empower staff and ensure that they always have the right and ability to call 911 if there is a safety concern, and just again standardize those responses. This is also part of sort of starting to introduce other more in-depth trainings that we also offer alongside a full, 2-hour de-escalation, other options to build on those skills, but this is sort of creating that minimum, that floor, so that all staff have the same framework to approach it.
As a question, so thank you for this. It seems to me that the incident report and kind of someone having a group of people who keeps track of that will be really important going forward as well, because things will evolve, right? Issues will evolve, and so I think that'll be important too. Like, what's the governance and the process for making sure that that we're staying on top of what the incidents are, looking for trends, and then kind of feeding that back into the policy training as well.
Sure. So the incident report sort of guidance is outside of my role. And right now, and David probably has more information than I do, but we're actually selecting an updated incident report software. So my focus is on how we train people to standardize those responses so that when we look at them and review them, they're sort of being held to the same measure and easier to analyze for trends and other things in reporting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We do have a good process today for filing and managing incident reports, but is it as searchable or as the analytics piece? We don't really have that unless we were to do it manually, and so there is a process underway to move to a more comprehensive system to track this, because you really would like to be able to, well, this individual has now done X thing so many times over such and such a period of time. So being able to tell that pretty easily and straight away, I think will allow management and staff to be more responsive together to individual infractions that occur. So I think, it's also worth noting that a comprehensive review of all our policies in sequence has never happened. These have been created in one-off situations when needed, and the opportunity to starting with this fundamental one and move forward, I think is really, really great, particularly following our strategic plan that articulates the values, mission, vision, and what we're trying to achieve. So there is great convergence around having Audrey lead this work with us and for us.
Everything goes to plan, you'll be seeing me twice a year.
David, as a trustee, then, what I think if we are getting with this type of a set policy from a risk management component, I know we hear verbally some of the incidents and how they escalate, or we hear some of the major ones, but one of the most important pieces is the safety of the patrons and of the staff. So this might be an opportunity going forward to begin to develop as part of the, I don't know whether we want to have it finance or audit, but as a report back, kind of the incidences, and now that you're being able to get some analytics behind it, it might be a good risk management component to have as part of our board meetings, at least quarterly or annually, whatever we decide. But I think it gives us an opportunity to manage it or understand it a little better.
No, I think that's right, and I think sometimes one hears anecdotally that a particular branch is having a lot of incidents, but what does that really mean, and can we analyze that in order to take the right systemic actions to respond, as opposed to there's just a particular trend that has happened. So I think the suggestion of including this in some level of annual reporting, I think is a good one.
If I can just, I know she wants to wrap it up because I just want to make sure we stick to schedule.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Maybe, can I just have a comment question? Just, it's always a piece of, first of all, thank you so much, Audrey, this is terrific, of sort of understanding sort of measure what matters, right? And so you roll out the AUP, I think this is terrific. This is a lot of the etiology of the suspect is a lot of the incidents that happened last summer, which, led to psychological safety concerns. And in the hospitals, this happens all the time, you measure incidents, but that may not be, seeing a rise in incidents could actually be a good thing, right? So you're looking at the reporting piece, and people feel more comfortable about reporting. So the guidance, or maybe the question is measuring sort of, and I would say getting a pulse check of psychological safety. I mean, the whole piece, one of the pieces of rolling this out presumably is to make people and the staff feel better, that there's a backup, that there's an escalation process, et cetera, rather than the actual incident, which is harder to control because that may be coming from patrons. So.
Absolutely, and I'll just add, she's not here, but Taylor Morris, our social work manager, has been involved in this process since October, and then we see this as a direct complement to her work of helping to implement a trauma-informed framework as well. You have a clear training and understanding of the policy, and you have a clear training and understanding for how to approach situations, particularly before they reach the level of needing to ask a patron to leave for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next topic within the President's report relates to our digital strategy, and Jessica Chappell, Chief Digital and Online Services, is joining us for a presentation on some opportunities around OpenAI that we have shared with you, but we thought it would be good to give you some more information about what we're doing and what we're not doing, and also open the discussion to the transformation process that really is an opportunity here. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, David, and good morning, trustees. And I don't have any slides. This is going to be a pretty quick text update, and then some time for questions and discussion, I hope. So as David mentioned, this is about our AI-enhanced digitization initiative that we will be launching with funding from OpenAI. The goal of this project is to digitize significant research collections that have, because of their scale, complexity, or other challenges of description, or are just very challenging to digitize. We hope to make these publicly accessible, and in the course of doing that, develop a workflow that will, a digitization workflow that allows us to modernize our approach to these kinds of collections, and specifically to look at how we can use AI technologies, and I am using the plural there because I wish to encompass multiple forms of artificial intelligence technologies, including machine learning, computer vision, and what everybody now knows to be AI, which is generative AI. But to use this to do things like enhance metadata for discovery, to improve text recognition for readability, and also to boost accessibility of digitized materials. For instance, with photographic archives, we often want to be able to include a description of the activity that is happening in the photograph in addition to the other identifying information. This is kind of key to accessibility for people who are using screen readers and other things. But it's very difficult to do at a scale beyond a few hundred items. So I want to give you a little bit of an update to start on the status of our agreement with OpenAI and some details about the terms of the agreement. So right now we have a letter of intent that has been signed with OpenAI that was signed in December 2024, excuse me, that outline the scope and the terms of this agreement. We are currently working with the City of Boston legal team and Audrey to finalize the agreement. And our hope is that we will have the legal review process completed by early April, and that we would be able to bring the agreement to you for approval at the May meeting. This project really focuses on public domain materials. We will be very attentive to intellectual property rights, of course, so it's going to be materials in the public domain. And our agreement also maintains BPL's control over collections decisions. Anything that is digitized as part of this project will come out of the decisions of the collection managers and the curators. They will be deciding what is of value and what is meaningful to digitize for the community as part of this. OpenAI's initial funding commitment is $2 million to support digitization efforts, plus an additional $100,000 in product credits, that is access to their API. This will cover approximately 3 years of enhanced digitization work. If the project goes well and we all wish to continue, there's the possibility of an additional $2 million for another 2 years of digitization. So this is essentially a $4.1 million agreement over 3 to 5 years. The next steps of this are that we will begin our statement of work phase, and this is where we're really going to outline the scope of everything that we'll be doing. So this will be the specific collections, sort of broadly identified, for the pilot and production phases. This will be the development of the workflow processes as well as the quality benchmarks. It's going to be very important to this project that any use of AI meets our standards for outputs, and those standards are going to be set very high. This will also be a time during which we're determining our vendor relationships and the technical requirements, and really establishing the timeline for the implementation phases. I should say finalizing those, formalizing those. Right now, what we're looking at for a project implementation timeline is the statement of work in April and May. Then we will hopefully get it approved, the agreements and everything else approved in May as well. In June and August, through June and August, we'll be preparing for the pilot phase. This will be identifying our first little batch of materials. We're aiming for approximately 5,000 items, or about 1 million pages. And this is a strategically modest beginning. We really want to be able to test the workflow, test the technologies, determine that it meets our benchmarks, that everyone is, this is kind of working for all the different departments who are going to be part of this project, and that the quality will be there, that these are digitized materials that we do want to make accessible, that they will serve the community in the way that we need them to serve the community. Only if these benchmarks and these other metrics are hit will we go into the production phase, which right now we're estimating to begin early in 2026. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about it, about this project.
So how again does it work with OpenAI? It's a service that we're paying for that?
No, this will
They're
be,
giving us our money to have these things part of their now database or whatever,
yeah, the way the agreement is being written is that it's being put into one of our standard templates for a grant agreement. So when it is finalized, they will provide to us the $2 million for us to cover our expenses for this digitization. The agreement does stipulate that we will provide them with these digitized materials, but we have negotiated that there will be no embargo, there will be no restrictions. OpenAI will not have exclusive access. Everything that is digitized as part of this project will be released on a rolling basis in the same way that we digitize all other materials, so they will be publicly accessible from the beginning. So OpenAI AI will get the digitized materials for their training data sets, for their purposes. But there will be no exclusive use. This is really for us. And one of the great things about this is that we get to decide what the collections are, so it's really going to be driving, we're going to be driving the materials that are being made accessible this way. Yeah.
I also had a question. Thank you for joining us this morning. I wondered if you could comment briefly on what peer libraries are using, whether they're using OpenAI or other providers. And second, it's the whole approach to AI is evolving so rapidly. It sounds like we've been thoughtful in negotiating terms such that there won't be restrictions and that important digitalization enhancements will happen. Are we reasonably confident that this work will not be obsolete, and that regardless of how the world of AI evolves, that this work is going to be meaningful and useful?
Yes, I am confident of that. So this agreement does not restrict us to using OpenAI's products. So we have the product credits, which is great because we get access to the API and we can develop something, but we're not limited to that. So if we were to want to use Gemini or another product, we would be able to do that. Our peer institutions, the ones that I know of who are doing a lot of work in this space are Northwestern University, Harvard, and Yale, and they are using a range of models and tools. Mistral is very popular. OpenAI certainly is very popular. A lot of what's happening out there right now is still very much in the experimental phase. So Yale, for instance, a few weeks ago released a study they had done of some photographic archives, and they tested this across 20 different models and hit like a benchmark and evaluated all of them for this. And that's actually a lot of what's going on in the space right now in libraries. No one's really settled on a model or a tool that really kind of answers all things. And partly that's because this technology can't. It is moving so fast. The benchmarks are moving so fast. Everybody's kind of reaching out there to, evaluate and keep up. I think, one of the things about how we're structuring this project is that we are initially partnering with the Institutional Data Initiative at Harvard, and they will be our partners in developing our methodologies for using this technology for metadata and the OCR enhancement and some of this other work that we want to do. So they're the ones who are really going to be doing the research into this, determining which ones are working best, are hitting our benchmarks, and then building for us the model and the tool that we can then apply. And my hope is that as this project goes on and we roll into production phase, that we continue that partnership with them, because their role is going to be this research piece. So we'll be able to kind of keep going back to them and kind of updating the benchmarks, updating the tools, and moving with the technology as it changes.
Thank you.
I mean, this puts us at the table in many ways among our public and research library peers, in a way that sometimes libraries have a tendency to wait until something is fully baked, and then it's too late to be at the front edge of that. And so without giving up any restrictions, this is actually a real win-win, and I think puts us at the table with many of our peers. There are other initiatives within the Urban Libraries Council and research library communities that are trying out other things, including what Jessica has mentioned. So we're not ignoring those at the same time, but this one allows us to actually in real time test out what works, what is the quality product that comes out of it. Is it good enough? Is it really good? Or is it not good enough, and then we need to go in a different direction? So I think this is really, really exciting. In some ways, some of the OpenAI tools are really about smarter search or about faster automation, as opposed to true generative AI, which is actually creating from data sets particular characteristics that maybe will assist in the cataloging metadata process. But it will unlock in real terms for us whole ranges of our collections that we have yet to touch from a digitization point of view. So it's hard to consider that this isn't a win-win across the board.
Well, it's fascinating, and yeah, it's moving so quickly. Existentially, you've got all your unique collection now, AI, and one of the things is how you control that, and I know that's even changing even quicker and faster. What's the model going forward? Because once the collection's really out there and available, just on your laptop, and people begin to look at a library differently, that's kind of the bigger question, I think, not for today's answer, but matches up with the strategic plan and where this is taking us. To have all of the library at your fingertips is pretty remarkable. And that's probably where we'll end up heading, which is great, more knowledge for all. But at the same time, what is that model for the library going forward that allows you to balance off the two?
Yeah, and I certainly would, I think this is a really important discussion, and everybody's kind of having it within the library world, but it shores up the importance of qualified staff to act as concierges or navigators for people. You can digitize everything in the world, but if you don't have a companion to guide you through what's reliable and what's not, having the data digitized itself is not enough. And certainly in our world today, and as in the strategic plan with Welcoming Destination, Lifelong Research Partner, Trusted Resource, and Community Engager, there are other aspects of the work that are about the people side of the business and less about the collections per se. But Jessica talked about digitizing 5,000 items in a collection of 23 million, where, best case, we have somewhere between 4 and 12% fully digitized. This will be a while.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not worried in the short term, and as long as we continue asking ourselves the questions about what the future is. Not being at the table would be the only mistake in this particular opportunity, if you ask me.
So, Jessica, I'm sorry. I was going to say that the research part is so important. Depending on what AI you use, you get a different result, and getting accurate results is important. And for what you're researching, you get there's so many types and different responses on AI that I'm happy to hear that we're partnering for the research portion of it, because it's one of the most critical pieces of this initiative. So thank you for that presentation, Jessica.
Thank you.
And Jessica, one more question, if I may. Especially when things are moving so quickly and there isn't a defined standard yet, is there benefit to working more closely with some of the other institutions that are also embarking, as you said, on this journey? And maybe you are informally, but do you think that there's benefit in creating a more formal collaboration or coalition to accelerate the learning and how to do this and how to?
Yes. Oh, yes, very much. And that's about setting standards and benchmarks. It's also about the infrastructure. And it's also really about libraries being able to take control of this technology for ourselves. Like, one of the things that I would love to see come out of an initiative like this, and out of an initiative working with other institutions and other libraries, would be the development of a library model. So we would have ownership of the technology for ourselves and for our patrons, built on our materials. So we understand the provenance of it. We know the veracity of it. We know we're offering this high quality, really solid, base of training materials and a model built on that. I mean, that's something we can try to do on our own, but the power of that is going to come from a consortial effort, a number of institutions coming together. And there are some stirrings of that. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the history of the Google Books project, Google Books digitization in the early aughts, but there's a lot about that actually seems very familiar right now, with a lot of different parties kind of in play, and different institutions trying to hook up in different ways. So, but yeah, I see a lot of benefit in that. I hope very much it does go in that direction.
Trustee Masso.
Thank you for this. What, if any, threats are out there for something like this? And I don't mean cybersecurity. I mean, what policy threats that are not our policies, but may come from the federal government, for instance, that might threaten something like this?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. I would turn that one to David as
I think we're seeing a set of restrictions right now emerge around research generally, or trust in educational institutions generally. So I think we want to pay attention to that. OpenAI is a corporate player in this space, and so I think we want to pay attention to what where are their interests and our interests in alignment, and where are they not. I also think there's a whole other realm, which we're not talking about today, but is where the library is the partner to our patron community around learning new technologies and understanding how to tell fact from fiction, and that realm. So there is also a discussion that we're having internally about how to be teachers of how to use ChatGPT or other tools just in our everyday life. The long-term social impact here is one that is relating to the evolution of work and what types of roles may no longer exist the way they exist today. But that's been true of every wave of technology revolution, not just this particular one. So I think there are threats on that scale that, you know, we have to continue centering our values, and as a human-centered institution, what do our patrons need from us as an educational and community organization?
Jessica, this is terrific. You know, common question, but I guess I would first say that AI is one of those unique topics that cross-cut across so many different industries, and this may be where the different voices of the trustees can come into play. You know, Lynn from academia, Jonathan, Julie from private sector, we have legal minds here, and, you know, we can imagine sort of offline setting up a smaller group to sort of help trade some thoughts, right?
That'd be wonderful.
You know, comment from my end, maybe question is, at least within healthcare, the classic mantra, of course, is data is the currency of the realm, right? And I think one of the pieces that you're hearing from here is we want to be vendor neutral, so to speak, right? And we want to work with OpenAI. We're appreciative of grants or so. But I think one of the pieces is just making sure we don't, quote unquote, sell ourselves too short, right? So the data, you know, News Corp, you know, has a relationship with OpenAI for $250 million over 5 years, right? And so I guess one of the pieces, just maybe this is ticky-tacky, is that all the data will be public use, but is OpenAI having any advantage, so to speak, in sort of the format or the way they get the data as compared to, say, Google or Anthropic or any other group?
I suppose yes, in that we will probably be setting up a server. We'll be setting up a bucket of some form, and the content will flow into there, and that won't happen for Google or the other companies. They'll have to scrape us with their bots, as they currently do. So I guess yes, in that way, we could say they have an advantage, but it's an advantage that, it's a very, I would call it a narrow one.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I asked, sorry, I mean, I asked, because the extreme form of this would be a content licensing deal.
Yeah.
Right? And if
Yeah.
it was purely exclusive, that's what this would look like. And therefore, the number associated with the grant should be just much higher. This isn't quite that, but if OpenAI has some sort of advantage, you know, my encouragement, I'll leave this to others who are smarter about this than I am, right? Then we want to make sure that we're getting value for what we're giving.
Yes, and I think we also want to be sure that we're getting reciprocity out of this. This can't just be about cost recovery.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess what Jose just said, though, the OpenAI, you know, the filters, this censorship, you know, I just had the opportunity to go to 2 libraries that were closed because of funding cuts. And so I guess what I'm saying is, how much protection do we have on this is ours, we don't want it filtered, we don't want it controlled. And, you know, I will tell you, the idea of a library system that allows you more control than a company, I think all bets are off on what gets censored and what gets filtered, and I think paying attention to that is going to be really critical. I don't know if there's not much we can do, but it kind of resonated with me that this is our knowledge, and we want it to get out to everyone. And we're relying on corporations and a government right now that how much will that be free?
Yes, and to that point, and also to Mr. Masso's earlier question, the thing that really keeps me up at night about this is the possibility of knowledge enclosure, so that we digitize these materials, we make them accessible, that OpenAI or other companies take them. And there is a process similar to what we have seen happen to the internet over the past 10 to 15 years, this kind of creation of walled gardens and people being locked into systems. And you do theoretically have that sort of still public space. People can still go and create a website for themselves, but increasingly people are very much in these worlds that are operated and managed by others. And so when I think about the possibilities of this technology and the possibilities of building these models and being part of this, I do get very excited about the potential for this, because I see that just that possibility for human creativity and flourishing, and really unleashing our collections to do what we hope they always do for people. But there is this very real risk that we create these materials, we put these data sets out there, and companies scoop them up. There is this enclosure, and suddenly what was public has become corporatized. And we've done it with the best of intentions, because we wanted open access, and we thought we were looking out for that. But sometimes, as we've learned from the web, right, our intentions do go astray.
It's also why I like the pilot nature of this engagement, so that we can learn exactly where the risks and dragons are, while also understanding what is the opportunity and how do you weigh those together.
Yeah, I agreed. I know there's no easy answer to any of this 6 months ago. I never would even asked a question. So things change so quickly that I just think it sounds like you're on top of that, and that's a big concern for the library and you know, the work we're doing with. So I think you're right on the kind of like a beta test just to understand it better. So thank you for the response.
I can tell that this is a topic that everyone wants to roll up their sleeves on. My encouragement is maybe we do set up some offline time for the folks that are interested from the trustees, and then we hit some other agenda items. That's all right. But very much, a lot of people are interested in this, so thank you very much, and we'll do more of this.
Thank you very
Jessica.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll move to item C in my report, which is a very brief update on our strategic plan implementation planning work. We have conducted a full webinar for our staff to begin the process of bringing the full staff up to speed at the all-staff day on Friday that Chair Liu just referenced, which was wonderful. We had some breakouts for people to go deeper into the plan as written. In partnership with the Boston Public Library Fund, we've also conducted the first of a series of, I think, 4 or 5 public sessions for community members and donors and prospects to participate in dialogue around the plan. And we do have our project management implementation specialist on board, and we've begun the work of trying to sort through the 86 initiatives to begin looking at which of these need to go first. And at the May meeting, I will be happy to give you a report in more detail, but also with greater opportunity for trustee engagement on the particular topics that are rising to the top and that you may have most interest in individually and as a body. As a general update, I do also want to draw attention to the impacts of the federal policy changes that are affecting libraries in the whole community. As of last Friday, an executive order was released relating to the future of the IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, our equivalent of NEA, NEH, with a proposed set of reductions in their funding spend. While we have benefited from IMLS grants from time to time, none of our existing operating budget is directly related to those funding streams. That is not true of our colleagues across the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, and so there are likely to be knock-on effects of that. We are in dialogue with colleagues across the state on what the options are to respond to this. And just as with all of the other changes happening, we take them one by one, assess the implications, and make recommendations about what we need to do. I'd be remiss in not recognizing that this is a real threat to libraries and to society as a whole. And that concludes my report, unless there are specific questions today.
Great.
Sorry, I just have to fast forward a little bit here.
I think we're going to move to Finance and Audit Committee from Evelyn and Emily.
Hello, people. All right, so good morning, all. My apologies for not being there. We're going to start with the Chinatown branch, and actually I added a little bit of history. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yep.
Just to give you a history, there's a lot of new trustees. This has been an ongoing thing. The library had in 1915 a library delivery station in a branch that was open in what is today the 210, 262 Harrison Ave, the Taitung Village. That was closed. And then since then, I'm not going to go through the whole history. There's been a lot of whiplash that the community has experienced with various opening and closings of various temporary services. In 2018, Marty Walsh committed a permanent location for the branch. And finally, 87 years later, because I want you to know it's 87 years later, the city has found a permanent location. And so we're happy to announce that after doing, planning studies that started in 2017, a site has been located. So here's some of the details about the site. The construction will be done by the Asian Community Development Corporation. It's a condo space, so if you think about it, multi-use. So our branch will be 1,700 square feet, which is about average if you compare to the other branches. They're around that size, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller, but that's about average. And it would be shared with 110 affordable housing units in the building. The purchase price is not to exceed 11,812,500. The city, this is all being paid by the city, so this is city funding. So the way that it's going to work is the city will pay, a little bit over $1 million on soft costs, and then the construction company will start construction this spring, summer timeframe. And then it will be ready for the library somewhere in 2027 to start outfitting, and making it become a library. Emily, anything you want to add?
You took all my notes, Evelyn. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the only additional piece I would say is that the library is coordinating the procurement and purchase of the condo, but the title for the library branch there will be the City of Boston.
And that's an important piece. The trustees, just from historical perspective, we used to own property, and throughout the years, the property has been sold back to the city. So that was a question that I had for Emily. So the city will own the piece of property. The trustees do need to approve of this opening of this branch in the future, and then approving making the purchase, of course. Any questions?
This is just a huge milestone on that 87-year history, and so this may seem like a little bureaucratic step, but it's really, really important to the library, to this community, and just to everybody who's been involved. I would recognize Allison Ford, our major projects coordinator, and Tom Broom, who's our other city legal colleague, have been actively involved in this. And so the trustee's role is really as the entity that can approve the taking of the condo and technically the purchase of the condo from ACDC in order to bring about the creation of the branch within this housing development.
And these are city funds that are being used outside of our regular budget, obviously.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Yeah, this is outside of the approval. I think this is really exciting, and it looks like a beautiful new branch, and thank you to everyone who worked hard to make this happen. As we consider aspects of the welcoming destination part of the strategic plan, it would be interesting to consider further whether there are other opportunities like this in the city in light of the dislocation in the commercial real estate market, for example, and the desire to provide more affordable housing. And I really love the idea of this being a development that is going to mix affordable housing and the library services. And I suspect there are other places in town where we could make a similar impact.
Thank you for the leading question, because coming right along behind within a year or so will be the Upham's Corner and West End locations, both of which do have libraries, but will, in the case of Upham's Corner, move to a new location that will also be a housing and library development, and the West End on the existing site will move to that. Those all have developers assigned, are in active pre-design stages. So yeah, really exciting. So thank you for the leading question. That there are at least two more, and it may not be right for every community. We know that, but where it's possible, makes sense, and it's our little contribution to helping with the housing crisis.
Comment. question. I seem to have a lot of those today, but huge support. I have the opportunity to often talk to the leaders of ACDC, and they're very, very excited. This is a great partnership in so many different levels and much needed in the location. And then small question, so just to, again, clarify, this is essentially the funds is net neutral to the BPL Board Trustees Fund. It's a pass-through, correct? As we were
Correct.
saying. And then the $1 million is part of the $1 million in soft costs is part of the 11.8 or additional pass-through?
It's included in that.
Got
So upfront, it's about 10% that we will be paying out for the soft costs.
Got it?
And then the
All right.
interior build-out is part of our regular capital budget, which has an assigned component. So that's not under discussion today, but it's not the total amount that's in play.
Any additional questions? The one thing I would say is I want to thank the community, their resilience and their insistence is what made this happen. I want to encourage the community to also continue to be engaged. There continue to be meetings about, what is this branch going to look like in the end. So kudos to the community and continue the community engagement to make this branch a great success. So with that, I'm going to take a vote if there are no more questions.
I have to do it roll call because you're online, Evelyn. Just wanted
Yes.
to let you know that. Do you want to do the motion? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Bal,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Canales, Heiler, Kim,
Yes.
Levine, Lou,
Yes.
Masso,
Yes?
Oliwola,
Yes.
Rush, I'm sorry, not Rush, Westra,
Yes.
Wooten.
Yes.
So moved.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. The next is the E-rates. So this is funding that we get from the federal government for various IT projects. The first one is multi-site connectivity, and then the next one is replacing the MBLN Wi-Fi. And they're all funded by this E-rate funding. This is something that was reviewed by the committee, and it's recommended to go in front of the trustees due to the amount. Are there any questions? No? All right, so I'm gonna get a motion to approve as a slate. Motion, second? All right, roll call.
And this is for a slate of the 2 E-rate votes. Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Bal,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Canales, Heiler, Kim,
Yes.
Levine, Lou,
Yes.
Masso,
Yes?
Ole Iwola,
Yes.
Westra,
Yes.
and Wooten.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you all so much. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Great. So moving along, thank you very much. There's a number of different items just as we close out. We'll have an opportunity for an executive session, which I'll call for a vote on, new business, and then public comment. I'll start with a vote for the executive session. It's an opportunity for us to speak after this meeting. And the purpose is to discuss strategy with respect to the collective bargaining, given that there is an open meeting discussion, may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the library under exemption number 3 of the Massachusetts open meeting law. So we put a motion to vote forward that the trustees of the Public Library of the City of Boston approve to enter into executive session for the purpose to discuss collective bargaining strategy under exemption 3 of the Massachusetts open meeting law, which will convene at the conclusion of the public meetings. Do I have a motion to approve? Or, sorry.
Just need to note that we will not be reconvening in a public session after this.
Understood. Great. Thank you. Then, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, aye?
Nope, I have to do a roll call vote. I'm
Roll
sorry.
call. Got
I'm
it.
sorry. Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Bal,
Yes.
Berman,
Yes.
Canales, Hyler?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Levine?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Masso?
Yes.
Olaiwola?
Yes.
Westra?
Yes.
And Wooten.
Yes.
So moved.
Great. So new business before we go into executive session. I don't think I have much, but did want to announce that Portia has her new bookstore open. Is that correct? This last few months? What's the name of it and a little news?
Just Bookish in Fields Corner.
Great. Exciting news for everybody. Absolutely terrific. And hopefully some of us will get a chance to come by at some point. And that is it.
I sent you something. just
Yes,
now.
I'm just looking at it right now. So we are working collaboratively with the city's Public Facilities Department, I believe, and the mayor's office to schedule a groundbreaking for the Fields Corner branch. Is that right? So great news also. Right by you, I guess. And yes?
We've been working with the Fields Corner to do some programming. So.
Okay, great.
They're looking to do that in late April or early May. We're just trying to land a time with the mayor's office.
Terrific, great. I don't think I have any other new business. I would note tomorrow is the State of the City for those who can make it or listen in. Should be a terrific opportunity. Those who can make it and don't have tickets yet, just let me know. I'm sure there's a way to get tickets for tomorrow for the trustees. And we will or will not do public comment?
We do. We have two signed up. There is none for online, but we have two here in person. We have Alyssa Cadet. There you are. Do you want me to bring it up to you? All right, sure, we'll bring that up. And we also have Amy Leighton. Is it Catalic? Is that how I say your last name? All right. First time in 10 years that I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize. Thank you, Judah.
Thank you. Just need to find some light, too. Good morning. My name is Alyssa Catalic. I'm president of the ASME 1526 bargaining unit. Just a couple of things from me today. With regard to the AUP, you heard about earlier as we were talking about text versus importance of staff, and I think it's just important for you to hear from staff that part of our problem has been understanding the support from management when it comes to these issues, that you know, if you throw a chair at West Roxbury versus at Roxbury versus at South End, you know, versus in the teen room in Central, that the responses are the same, and that's not been the case. You know, we talked to, I believe I did hear David say that the incident report process is in place, and it's, you know, it's not good. We don't know what happens. We don't know what happens in our branches. We don't know what happens across the street. We're not informed of things that happen when there's shootings across the street, or 5 plainclothes detectives are coming in and arresting patrons in our buildings. So there's a lot of work that still needs to happen with that. I do appreciate the work that Audrey has done, and wearing my other hat as the training coordinator, being brought in to assist and help with that is definitely a step in the right direction, and something that moving forward hopefully we'll see more of, but it is broken, and so hoping this policy and other policies do continue to have staff input, and know that there are guidelines and the support of management will be helpful. Which segues into my next statement about talking about we've informed staff, AUP kept us engaged, and yet nothing about OpenAI until March. So we signed, you know, we go into negotiations December, I believe, 2024 was when it was discussed. That would have been a great topic at our all-staff day that you just heard about, instead of maybe some others, but that's something that reading about it at, you know, an institution, and a notification from research libraries, then getting something paragraph from staff, and then reading about it in the Globe doesn't really give staff any time to discuss and talk about it. I'm not going to talk about the merit of it, just the fact, again, that communication is broken between management and our staff.
Thank you, Alyssa.
I got one more, and I'll be really quick, Pam. I think you started timing me before I actually started. With Chinatown and with West End and with Upham's Corner coming up, let's be proactive with bargaining with our unions instead of reactive. We did it with Grove Hall. let's learn from Grove Hall. This is different. This is people and condos and people living above us. So we have the timeline. Let's start now. Thank you.
Next, we have Amy Layton.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Layton. I represent the BPL PSA, MLSA 1498. I'm really glad that you all mentioned the executive order regarding the IMLS today. I know that literally just happened. And I think you're absolutely right in acknowledging that many other libraries get funding from that. And when that gets cut, we're going to see the overflow. We are going to see the ripple effect. I know that right now, what Alyssa was also saying with respect to communication, with respect to the policies being updated, staff right now are really feeling very unsupported. We don't see transparency or communication, and what we've been asking for has not really been responded to, none of which is new. You know, you've heard me speak before. But I do think that it is very important to start responding immediately rather than waiting and being reactive. Yeah, I think that's actually all I have to say. Thank you so much just
Thank
for
you, Amy.
acknowledging.
Thank you. Can somebody grab that microphone for me, Priscilla? Thank you. That's it for public comment.
So I believe with that, I'll call for an adjournment for the Boston Public Library Board of Trustees meeting for today. Our next session looks like it will be Tuesday, May 20th, for the annual meeting of the BPL at the Central Library at 8:30 a.m. With that in mind, thank you very much. We'll move to executive session.
Thank you. I do need to clear the room so that we can do the executive session. Thank you, everybody.